Simply stating, yes, following your intuition could possibly end up leading you to an experience of fleeting suffering. However, the suffering is not incorporated within the experience itself. It is a byproduct of our resistance. So the suffering is just a mental construct that it's our own doing. And it's just a byproduct to us resisting whatever is going on within that teaching experience, because all your intuition has led you to was an experience of learning, a teaching experience, an experience in which you could learn something that's going to help you to towards your infinite potential, that's going to help you align further with the goals you've been seeking, with whatever things you have been seeking. And that's because your intuition functions based on your alignment, like I said in my last video about intuition. And what that means is, for example, if you have been seeking, if you have aligned with love, if you have aligned with the love you seek, with a loving relationship, with a loving partner who loves you the way you deserve, who loves you the way you want them to love you, you have already aligned with this. However, there remains a little hiccup on your path towards that loving relationship, one aspect, a few aspects to you that prevent you from actually getting there, that prevent you from being in full alignment with that which you seek. What happens is, for example, with this particular example, your intuition might end up leading you to a toxic relationship. So you might think that you found that person, that person is the one that's going to provide you that loving relationship, and your heart is telling you that, your heart is telling you to follow that, your intuition is leading you, it feels inspired and it's not forced, you don't feel any aversion, you don't feel any resistance, because when it's intuitive, it's not resistance, it's not resisted, you don't feel resistance or aversion, and you receive with any intuition, you receive a surge in your energy, excitement that allows you to fulfill your calling, that allows you to fulfill that intuition. And if you act upon it, if you listen to it and you live based on that intuition, you end up getting in that relationship, and then you end up realizing that it actually is a toxic relationship. What's happening here is that your intuition has led you to an experience, to a teaching experience in which you learn to love yourself. Because if you are seeking a loving relationship but you don't love yourself, you have a specific hiccup, and that hiccup is that you don't love yourself, and you cannot be with that which you are not already. You cannot have in life that which you are not. So if you don't love yourself, if you don't know what love feels like, if you don't know how love is, how do you expect yourself to find it? How do you expect yourself to attract, to create it, to manifest it in this 3D reality? This whole 3D reality is just a reaction to consciousness. It's just the manifestation of consciousness, of pure conscious energy. And whatever you are able to visualize, to live through your consciousness, through your 3D being, you are able to attract and create in this 3D reality. But that's a whole different topic. For now, in order for you to learn to love yourself, you have been led to a toxic relationship. The problem is that we don't understand exactly what's going on, and we think that we have followed our intuition. So why are we experiencing so much resistance, so much aversion on our path? Why is it not going as we expected it to be? Why is it not even a good, free, peaceful experience? It's the complete opposite of everything that you've been seeking, of everything that you've been actually trying to attract into your life. So how did your intuition lead you there? And once you understand that it was your intuition that led you there, because you need to love yourself, from being with a toxic person, you end up growing sick from shadowing yourself, from being gaslighted, from crossing yourself for over and over, from letting others step over your boundaries. And towards the end of this experience, you learn what true love means. You understand how to really love yourself, and then once you love yourself and you learn many other small lessons, the experience sort of comes with one or two main major lessons, and then along the whole journey, along that whole experience, it pushes in one thing and another thing and another thing that are minor things that you also need in order for you to align with the love you've been seeking, with true love. Then the whole thing about suffering is that it is done by ourselves. We cause the whole suffering through such an experience, because what we're thinking going into that experience, we followed our intuition. If we follow our intuition, it should lead us to good. So why is this not good? And it's all from our point of view, it's all from our perspective. It's not good based on our perception. It's not good because things did not go as we expected it to. So accordingly, it's not a good experience, and we end up resisting, being averted. We end up hating that experience. We end up wanting a different experience. We end up wanting to change so many aspects within that experience that we were meant to go through, that we were meant to experience for a specific reason based on our alignment. We have aligned with something and we have been led to this experience. Once we enter the experience, we had a set image while going in it, because we are following our heart, we're following our intuition, we're following God, we're following our inspiration, our energy. So how could it not be a nice experience, a pleasant, an experience of peace and bliss and joy? Why am I experiencing all of those nits and knots on within this experience? And then we end up resisting. We end up trying to force things within that inspired experience. So the whole experience within itself is inspired, is intuitive, is your calling, and you have received the surge of energy to act upon it, and that's why you felt excited, you felt driven and motivated to go experience it. However, once we realize that it's not going as we expect it to be, we end up resisting, and in this resistance we end up forcing experiences within the major inspired experience. So what you do is that you turn your inspired action, your intuitive action, into forced action once again, and now you're not acting out of love, you're not acting out of alignment, out of resonance, out of pure energy, pure consciousness, but rather now you're acting out of the ego. You're acting based on egoic constructs, on egoistic needs. No, why is this going that way? I wanted it to feel like that. I wanted it to be like this. I wanted it. And now we are recreating the cycle. We are recreating all of those patterns that we've been speaking about, that the ego calls you, because the ego thinks that this should not have been that way, that this is not what's best for my survival, and I should force what's best in my survival. So you end up causing fights, you end up causing arguments, because you're not enjoying what you're going through, and you don't understand that it is a lesson. Once you understand that it is a lesson and you let go, you detach yourself, you detach your value, you become less and less affected by the outcome. You become more and more detached towards the outcome. It will soon dissipate. It will soon disappear from your life. Once you understand that it is a lesson and it is there to serve a purpose. Once that purpose is served, it goes away. And that's the whole beauty of lessons. However, what we experience is something like a sort of a tug of war, and we end up surrendering to the experience once we understand that it is actually a teaching experience. So that's even once we understand, we end up creating more and more of the suffering, because it's so hard to surrender to something that went completely against our expectations, especially when you have invested so much belief and trust in it. So you took that leap of faith because now it came intuitive to you. Maybe you were hesitant at first. Maybe you were experiencing, double thoughts, and you were confused about it. But then you chose to trust. You chose to take that leap of faith. Believe in your experience. Believe in your journey. Believe in yourself, your higher self. And then it turns out that way. Especially when this happens, it becomes way harder to let go of it. It becomes way harder to let it be not according to our standards and expectations. And so even once we understand that there are so many lessons for us to learn here, that we're so attached, that we're so in need of to control every aspect of our lives, that we're so in need to be loved because we are not able to love ourselves, that we rely on external factors, on external people to feel good, to avoid our lives, to escape. And you start seeing the lessons that are mostly dictating your life patterns, and then you have to surpass them. But then it becomes like a tug of war. What happens is that you give in for a little bit, and then some other minor lessons come into play, and you start pulling back. You start trying to shift. No, that should not happen. It becomes too much to bear. It becomes too hard on you, because now it's deviating. Once you surrender to the experience, it starts taking the full deviation from your expectation before it actually meet you at your alignment of true loving relationship. So within this specific example, and what happens is that once it starts taking more and more curves within that deviation, you start to pull back. Once you have let go, now you're pulling back, and you're like progressing a step and then regressing 2 steps. You're progressing 3 steps, you're regressing 2 steps, so on and so forth, until at some point you are led to a part within that experience that you are forced to surrender, that it's too much to bear, that there's nothing more for you to actually do to change the outcome, to change the circumstances, and then you're forced to surrender. But it took way longer than it should have, and that's because of our resistance. That's because we end up acting out of the ego. We end up changing the inspired action, the intuitive action, to a forced action, to forced thought, to a forced feeling, because we had a clash of expectations. We had a contrast in expectations, and we wanted to lead it back. We want so desperately to lead it back to our expectation, and now it becomes an act of desperation, an act of helplessness, an act of hopelessness, rather than it was an act of energized action, of love, of bliss. Now you're acting based on desperation and helplessness and agony and antagony and sadness and negative feelings in general. And the same works with any experience. This is just one example. Similarly with money, if you had aligned with something with a very with abundance, with wealth, with monetary wealth, and then you had some little hiccups along your path, some things that you're maybe too attached to having the money, you're too attached to the material, you're too attached to this, and so you're too attached to the concept of money itself, and you need to control everything perhaps. And then if you want to live an abundant life, you might need to let go of control, because with control you're always controlling the experience out of the ego. You need to let the experience be handled by your true higher self in order for you to be led to your abundance. And so in order for you to be led to that monetary wealth you've been seeking, maybe you got inspired to start some kind of a business, and then it failed. That's exactly what happened with me, and you end up losing a lot of money, and you end up losing your attachment to the whole concept of money and monetary wealth, and you're not anymore attached. You're not attached to the outcome, to the circumstances. You're led to understand that it's a journey of understanding, that it's a journey of enlightenment, and you learn to appreciate the journey rather than just being so stuck on the end goal, on the destination. Now you learn to appreciate the journey and take it for what it is, and now you're more aligned with the monetary wealth, with abundance that you've been seeking. And you can see the clash, you can see the paradox, sort of. It is not a paradox, but in a sense you have to experience the opposite sometimes when you're not fully aligned, in order for you to actually experience what you've been seeking. And that's why you might feel sometimes as if your intuition had led you to suffering, your intuition had caused you so much harm or suffering. And that's not true. What's true is that our resistance to what happens once we follow our intuition is actually what caused our suffering. Because once you follow your intuition, you're meant to just let go. You've given the drive wheel the steering wheel, you've handed the steering wheel to your higher self, and you should keep doing so. You should keep trusting. You should continue your belief, your trust in who you are, in your higher self, in your alignment, in your high vibration, in yourself, and understand that no matter what happens, it is meant for my highest good. It's not here to harm me. No matter what happens, it's not gonna harm me. It's not gonna be an experience of struggle or suffering, but rather it could just might as well be a minor deviation in order to enhance my destination, in order to enhance my ability to meet myself in my destination, in the destination I've been seeking. And that's how intuition works. I hope you learned something. Truly grateful for sharing all of this with me for this whole time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video by AF's Conscious Frequency. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, because it helps the video find its way to many more others who might actually need it.